Batman Annual number 2, written by Scott Snyder and Marguerite Bennett, art by Wes Craig. So this is just an entirely separate thing set up here. We've got a new orderly at Arkham, has transferred over. He is apparently from Metropolis, and his name is Eric Border. He's an optimist, and we see him basically coming into Arkham the same night that Batman shows up, and he's like, well, what are you waiting for? Lock me up. And turns out that this is the night where they are opening a new wing to Arkham Asylum, and Batman's going to just basically be the test dummy to see where their weaknesses are so that these supervillains will stop breaking out. But first we follow Eric a little bit. He's led around Arkham Asylum by one of the current orderlies, and it's just like, yeah, no, you really need to tone down the optimism, buddy, because it is a bit... like, this place is dark, like, it's messed up. And we walk through, we see, like, the Riddler and Clayface and Mad Hatter. And then eventually he sees this dark hallway where there's a single door down at the end. And he's like, what about down there? Who's down there? And he's like, oh, that's the oldest inmate we have at Arkham. She's called the Anchoress. And we don't worry about her. She's not important. She doesn't do anything big. So she's just down there. And we hear her call out saying, please come back, as they walk away. So then we see Batman's, he's being put to the test. And the Jeremiah Arkham is the one running it. And he's like, yep, nope, we've got all this stuff set up. You've been placed in a cell the same way any other supervillain would. Go for it. See if you can escape. And Batman looks around a cell and he's like, all right, you've got some good defenses here. There's no human contact. Everything's done by computers. That's good. However, I've managed to sneak some acid into the palm of my hand. Like, I made a surgical incision weeks ago, so I managed to get past your metal detectors. So I'll use that to break out of the cell itself. And then when he gets out, he activates some pressure plates. Well, he's like, well, Man-Bat can fly around, so you need motion sensors everywhere. And they're like, yeah, we got him. And then he's hit with some goop that freezes him to the floor. And he's like, Killer Croc would be able to shed his skin. Same way I can get out with my veneer off my armor or whatever. And so basically he just keeps on trying to escape. And we see Eric during this point. He's been told to leave because he was kind of getting a bit excitable for Dr. Arkham. And he goes back downstairs and he's like, Anchoress, you said come back? And he goes up to her and he sees that she is this just horribly tattered and wrinkled old woman with jet black eyes, and she's just not looking so good. And he's like, oh God, are you hurt? And he's like, no, I was a voluntary patient. And she basically just gives a rundown of why she was here, and that she grew up, she was super interested in like physics and science and stuff like that, which during her time, which she says is right when the Curies had won the Nobel Peace Prize. So way too long ago for her to still be alive, but she was trying to become a scientist, and her parents were like, no, you're going to be a normal girl and marry and have a bunch of babies and whatnot. And she argued against them, and eventually a fight broke out where a bunch of her chemicals exploded and her family was killed. And she was left alive, but she was unable to touch anything. And as she explains later, the scientists have discovered that she's basically quantum tunneling. Her electrons can move through stuff, and she's able to go through anything. So voluntarily, she locked herself up in Arkham. She got some help. She was starting to feel better. And then the real crazy started showing up. Batman showed up and started loading in all these villains. And it made it so that the people who genuinely needed help, like her, were unable to get it. And so she views Batman as the cause of why she has not gotten better, as to why this place has become its own personal hell. And Eric's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That sounds awful. What do you want me to do? And she's like, I just want people to know I'm down here. Could you just let them know? And maybe they could give me some help. And he's like, I'm kind of brand new. I'm not sure what I can do. She's like, fair enough. And then she just walks through the wall of her cell. And Eric's like, that doesn't seem too good. And she's like, oh yeah, I could have left at any point. This energy field they've got going on it conked out weeks ago. Like, I could have left at any time. But now I've been waiting for when Batman showed back up, so I will get my revenge on him. And she knows that he's around because she hears everyone whispering and talking about him. So she's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to take care of Batman and I'm going to get out of here. So we see Batman still trying to make his way through all the traps, when as he's fighting against one of them, the Anchoress comes out and just starts attacking Batman. And of course, he's unable to punch her because she can phase through anything. But she's able to, with her quantum tunneling, mess with like the electrons flow of his brain and whatnot. So it really does like do some serious damage to him. Eric goes around and is just like, okay, she said her plan was she's going to break every inmate out of Arkham, because she did technically say that. So they're off to stop that and hopefully see what they can do to save Batman as well. So Anchorus is just toying with Batman, but as he's stumbling around trying to stop her, he keeps on activating other traps that the asylum now has, and she's just like, oh, I'm going to take full advantage of this. And she says, I remember the first time I saw you, and it turns out it was just before Batman became Batman. It was during Zero Year, where he broke into the asylum trying to find some information on the Red Hood gang, and she caught him as he broke in and like started trying to attack him. And it was at that point that he sneaked off without being found, and all of the orderlies thought that she had just gotten violently crazy, so she was put on extra lockdown. So it's Batman's fault that she's as locked up as she is. And Batman's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. And she goes on this long tirade of like, oh, the worst way to die is in a cage, not a gun, not a knife, it's in a cage. That's the, and I'm gonna let you die in a cage of your own mind as I make you essentially catatonic. So she touches inside his brain. It starts stoking on a bunch of fears and stuff like that. We, of course, go back to the alley with the pearls. And she's like, oh, your parents died. Isn't that so sad? And then we see him shoot awake to Owlman from the Court of Owls storyline, Lincoln March. And he gets killed. And she's like, oh, you let your own brother die. Isn't that so sad and scary? And then we see Damien also impaled. And he's like, Dad, you let me die. And she's like, oh, you let your son die. Isn't that so sad and scary? So all that crumbles away, and she starts taunting Batman. She's like, oh yeah, you now welcome to your own cage. You'll be locked up here forever. And then Batman, he gets a tiny little few second reprieve because Eric and the other orderlies show up with a bit of the bars that was holding her, and they're feeding energy in it so that it can disrupt her powers. Gives Batman just enough time to escape, and Eric's like, look, we got her, we can take her, she doesn't have anything against us, you go, we can't save you if you're not here. So Batman goes off. Anchorus manages to get away for just a second, and she starts phasing through the floor. Apparently she somehow makes her way up to the roof. It got me on that one. And she fights down Batman up there. And she just is like weeping. She's like, you took my asylum away from me, my safety place, my Garden of Eden. And Batman's like, you just invaded my mind. I'm going to beat you up. And like, he's about to throw a punch or something, which he can still phase. So I don't know what the thing is. But then Eric comes up and says, no, Batman, don't do it. Can't you see that she's sick? And so he gets in the way. He collects Anchorus and Batman just stops, I guess. And we see Eric talking to the other orderly. They're getting some coffee, and it's just like, yeah, you know, she saw this place as a sanctuary, and you know what? I think it can be that way again. And so that little bit of optimism is serving out for it. I like it. I think it's good enough. It's just a completely separate little story. You don't need it for like Zero Year. You don't need it to explain anything going on otherwise. It's its fine little separate thing going on. So I like it. I think it is a good book in general. If I really had any major critiques, it's that it does feel, I don't want to say out of place, but it does feel like such a jarring, like, you know, we're in the middle of Zero Year, and then we just all of a sudden go over to this other thing. And I mean, nothing wrong with that if it's something, you know, like Zero Year's been going on a while, but I feel like this would have been the perfect place to explore more of that Zero Year stuff. Instead, they do that tiny little tie-in thing where they're like, oh, I actually caught you during the 0 year. It's like, okay, it's cheap in that regard. I either wish they would have went all the way or not included it all and let it be its own separate thing entirely. Not to mention the cover on this, like, says 0 year on it. So it's just tricking people into thinking it's more important than it is. But yeah, no, it's a fine enough little story. I think it's got a good message to it of, you know, asylums are meant to help people. And Arkham Asylum is the opposite of that. Whether or not that's Batman's fault, that's up for interpretation, but I think it was a nice little message they had to it. So overall, I'd say this one is probably just a flat 7. Art wasn't too stand out. Nothing was that incredible with it. If I see The Death of Damien or Crime Alley one more time, I'm going to scream. But it's the things that he's dealing with. What's weird is they brought back the Owlman thing. I didn't think he was really all that bothered about it, but apparently it is still messing with him a little bit underneath it all. So we'll see if that comes to anything. But overall, yeah, this is a 7. It's just a nice average comic.